Giving the situational briefing at T-minus 4 hours. Everything sounded well. You can see the Falcon 9 on the pad. As I mentioned, we static fired last week. The vehicle's been on the pad since then. We did the review of static fire. Everything looked good. Now we are getting ready for the crew ingress coming up, as the launch director said, a little bit later this morning. Now, most recently, activity on the Dragon late load cargo was put on a couple of days ago. Now we're ready for the crew to come out to the pad, down the access arm, and load into the capsule. Now, at the same time, we are also watching the weather. You heard the launch director talk about the weather brief we got 15 minutes ago. The tropical storm has begun moving onshore. That's actually improving conditions, both downrange in emergency splashdown locations if needed for Dragon, as well as at the launch site. We do expect, though, the probability of violating conditions is still 60%. The concerns at liftoff are going to be flight through precipitation, the thick cumulus clouds, and the possibility of violating the lightning rule. But right now, everything is still go. So with everything looking good from Hawthorne, we're going to send you down to Houston, where Gary Jordan is with the flight control team at NASA's Johnson Space Center in the Mission Control, Houston. How are the teams looking down there, Gary?
Thanks, John, and welcome everyone to Mission Control Houston. Today, I'm joined remotely by NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn. From this room, we've been supporting humans aboard the International Space Station for nearly 20 years, nonstop, every single day. Crews from all over the globe have visited the orbiting station, but it's been almost 9 years since they started their journey into space from American shores. And while the teams here may appear subdued and focused, there's definitely an excitement around the entire center to be returning launch operations to America.
It really is, and our astronauts are thrilled to be taking a new spacecraft into orbit. This will be the new first for us, flying to space on a commercial vehicle, and the entire astronaut corps will be watching. As with every first flight of a system, there are still things to be learned and proven out, but we believe this crew and this system is ready. You know, many people think of mission control when they think of Johnson Space Center, but this center is also home to world-class training facilities and thought leaders in spacecraft development. We have drawn from both of these disciplines and spent the last 3 years alongside the SpaceX team to make sure the Crew Dragon is the best spacecraft possible and that the astronauts are prepared for every scenario.
And this mission comes at a critical time for the space station, with only 3 crew members currently aboard, among them NASA's Chris Cassidy as the lone American.
Keep going, keep going.
Now I'm told we just had the formal handoff of the crew from the NASA team that has supported Hurley and Behnken in their 2-week quarantine over to the SpaceX team that'll get them suited up.
There will be a lot of firsts today, including a new suit for the crew to use during launch and entry. The crew quarters at Kennedy Space Center has supported human spaceflight for 5 decades, and now a new chapter is being written.
And it's exciting to witness it here today. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. Let's go back to the Kennedy Space Center to watch Suit Up in action as we continue to count down to launch. Leland.
Hey, thanks, Gary. Hey, Marie, this is amazing. We're in the Suit Up room. I mean, I remember this back in 2009 when I was sitting in Lazy Boys from back in the Apollo era, but they have these really cool new suits and new seats that they're working in here. So
yeah, it's so amazing to see this first live look in the room. Up there. Of course, Bob was mission specialist on STS-123 and STS-130. Bob's a native of St. Anne, Missouri, so I'm sure folks in his hometown are watching. Lots of hometown pride going on right now. And same for Doug. He was born in Endicott, New York, which happens to be my hometown too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But he considers Apple Lake in his hometown, so I know folks are watching there. And Doug was the pilot on STS-127, STS-135, which was the final shuttle flight. So it's so cool to see them in there, Lauren and Leland. Last time this room was used for this purpose that you see here was STS-135 in 2011, and Doug Hurley was one of the astronauts in there doing that. So this is really amazing to see.
Wow, so the suits are actually much more than just garments. They actually connect directly into Dragon seats. As you can see there, those GSC seats, or ground support equipment seats, are essentially replicas of the seats that are inside of the Dragon spacecraft. And the seats provide communications as through an umbilical, but also the ability to pressurize the suit if necessary. So right now what the suit team is doing is they're doing communications checks as well as a pressure check to make sure that the spacesuit can hold pressure in the event of a cabin depressurization emergency. This is the last time that we're going to do this check prior to the crew boarding Dragon, where we'll do it all again. So the way that leak check will work is we will provide or essentially inflate the suit with air and hold that pressure for a few minutes, watch the depressurization rate, and make sure that it stays within bounds.
And as we stay looking in the suit up room, you can see Doug Hurley there in the seat. He is the spacecraft commander for Demo 2. And while he continues with checkouts, we want to give you a closer look at the veteran Marine Corps fighter pilot and spaceflight pioneer.
Very excited. Yeah, very excited.
You feel ready? Still pumped?
Oh yeah, I think we're ready. I think we're certainly ready.
Joining the SpaceX Demo 2 test. He is a Marine Corps colonel and test pilot. He was selected as an astronaut in 2000. He piloted Space Shuttle Endeavour and Atlantis for STS-135, the final space shuttle mission. Introducing NASA astronaut Doug Hurley.
It's a life-changing process in so many ways to fly into space. It's just overwhelming in some respects. Just the sensations, the rumbling, the shaking, the acceleration. When the engines shut off and you go from, in the case of the shuttle, you go from 3 Gs to 0 Gs instantaneously and things start floating. And I remember distinctly just thinking, what just happened? To see a rocket launch in person is, it's a pretty emotional event. I remember the first time I saw a shuttle launch and it was amazing. And then when I saw a shuttle launch with my wife on it, that is quite the emotional experience. My name is Doug Hurley, and I'm the spacecraft commander for the Demo 2 mission to the International Space Station. We are doing the first crewed flight for NASA and for SpaceX. So this is the test flight to prove end-to-end from launch to docking to ISS operations and then entry, descent, and landing. This will be the first time the Dragon had a crew on board, and so there's a myriad of objectives we want to achieve for this mission. SpaceX has been responsible for design and essentially making this vehicle what it is. What the astronauts bring to the table is the crew vehicle interface. What would work on orbit, what might not work on orbit, what would definitely work, to be able to just have the entire integrated team that's going to support us getting to and from space station, talking together, working through the challenges that simulators typically throw at you. It was really neat being part of it. It's just been an incredible undertaking to see where we've come just in the last 5 years that Bob and I have been a part of this, and to be, shortly flying to the International Space Station with the Crew Dragon. It overwhelms you to think about how many people have, in some way, shape, or form, touched this program and this vehicle to get us to this point. And we are the lucky ones that get to fly it, but we certainly not for 1 second take for granted the amount of effort that so many other people had to put into this to make it successful.
For Doug personally, he's worked so hard, through his entire life, to get to where we are right now. As a test pilot, this would be the dream, to fly a new vehicle. So It makes me so happy to see that he gets to be part of this mission, the spacecraft commander. I'm just glad to see his hard work and his dreams come true for that.
It's been a long road in a lot of ways for not only us, but certainly for all the folks that work in the Commercial Crew Program, as well as SpaceX, in our case, just working to get to this point. It's been a huge amount of sacrifice and time away from home, but the fruits of our labor are coming to fruition.
We are now getting closer to when we expect to see the crew complete their suit checks and walk out of the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout building.
And before they do, here's an introduction to the Joint Operations Commander for Demo 2 and former Air Force flight test engineer, astronaut Bob Behnken.
When you go through the launch day preparations, there's a lot of moments that kind of stand out to you. One is the kind of the celebratory piece of it, which is that you're walking out of the suit-up room and getting in the vehicle that's going to take you to the launch pad. When you close the hatch, that's really when Doug and I are in the vehicle, and it's our vehicle, and we're really in control of the mission at that point.
Test pilots, their task proved that man could fly into orbit around the Earth and return live and well to talk about it.
There's always a balance of managing risk as you go forward to execute a test point and figuring out a way to collect the data. We hear a sound. Okay, is that sound an expected sound? Or we see a light, is that light an expected light? What's the source of it? Does it sync up with something else that's going on or not? So trying to dissect all of that in real time in your head is, a lot of things happen like that on launching of a vehicle.
From St. Anne, Missouri, he is an Air Force colonel and flight test engineer. He flew aboard Space Shuttle Endeavour twice. Introducing NASA astronaut Bob Behnken.
My career at NASA has kind of spanned a couple of decades at this point. I arrived with the class of 2000, went through the training program, primarily focused on the Space Shuttle and the International Space Station, learning those systems. Having launched a couple times on vehicles, the second time was definitely different than the first time. You can feel a little bit guilty of, hey, should I study one more thing, or is there one more piece of information I should get? Am I really prepared or not? So that's definitely different between where I was on my first flight and where I'm at right now. It's been really interesting, I think, for both my wife and I to have gone through the process of seeing each other launch in space. I've seen her take that risk and had it be in front of her, and I've done that to her. There's just something different about watching a rocket launch when there are people on board. You feel a little bit differently about the pit of your stomach, and I can only tell you it's multiplied significantly when it's somebody that you know, and then somebody, of course, that's a family member. It's even multiplied more.
For me personally, as a spouse, watching everything that Bob has put into this over the last 5 years, the dedication that he's shown, the perseverance is pretty special. For both of us, though, the way our minds work, it won't be until sort of the mission is complete that you have really a chance to savor it and celebrate it. This is a huge accomplishment for an Air Force flight test engineer to be part of the demonstration mission of a brand new vehicle. It's going to be amazing.
Without a partner that has that same appreciation, I think it can be challenging for some folks. There's a lot of work and a lot of time that takes away from family that that my spouse appreciates, and I love her for that. Really, my role on the Demo 2 mission is to make sure that we get this vehicle tested and evaluated so that we can move on to more operational missions at the International Space Station. We've got a lot of objectives on board the vehicle that we need to accomplish to really make sure that it's good to go. We'll make sure all those systems are working during the test flight so that the future missions will have them available even if they don't plan to utilize them. Through years of the NASA team, helping to share that experience and teaching them the lessons that we've learned by going through this. Now there's another capability in the U.S. besides NASA to operate something of this magnitude. When is the last time humans launched on a new vehicle? Certainly on the American side, it's been several decades. Now we're in a time when we've got multiple vehicles under development. It's a great time from a space exploration time frame just to see all that happening, and it's because of this nurturing of the environment, being able to pull in a wider group of people who can contribute towards a human spaceflight. It's a super cool time. On a deeply personal level, I'm really excited that my son is going to get a chance to see me launch into space. Being an astronaut has been a little bit of an abstraction thing for him because he's seen me do it in old videos, but he hasn't seen me do it for real. And so I'm excited for him to see this launch. I want to thank the entire Commercial Crew Program team that's worked together to get to this point where we've got vehicles in the launch pad ready to head to the International Space Station.
And we're back live in the room now with Bob Behnken on the left of your screen, Doug Hurley to the right. This is such a cool sight here. Leland, this must bring back a lot of memories for you.
Marie, it really does. I mean, looking at these new suits and these new seats, it's a little different than what I experienced 11 years ago, but it's all the same. The suit techs, the people around you that have been with you, getting you ready for this mission, it's just an amazing moment, and they're getting excited. You can see, these military guys don't really get that excited. They don't show their excitement like civilians do, but it's a moment of history, and we're getting ready for this momentous occasion.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool. We heard that earlier this morning they stepped outside with a cup of coffee in hand. Oh, we've got some visitors in the room now. It looks like SpaceX founder Elon Musk to the right of your screen, and NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine. Of course, you see a partition there to keep them a safe distance from the crew, but they're in there to say hello, wish them well before they depart the suit-up room. That's really cool to see there, and we can't hear what they're saying, but I'd love to be a fly on the wall in there right now.
Lauren, I wonder what Elon is saying.
Oh, just probably telling them how honored he is to be able to give them a ride today.
And I know the NASA administrator, he talked about this yesterday. I mean, he's met with the crew before today even and said, I've told Bob and Doug, it's not too late to call this off if you have any second thoughts. And of course, they had none. They're super pumped about this, ready to go. And right now, it's just, we just need the weather to cooperate.
Yeah, I try to think who could potentially be more excited than the SpaceXers, Bob and Doug.
Yeah, right?
And, it's amazing how we have commercial and government working together to send these two NASA astronauts to space safely. It's just it's a great combination of what we can do when we put our minds to things and be creative and innovative and work together as one community.
I totally agree, Leland. I see Bob and Doug walking around our headquarters in Hawthorne all the time. They're basically family members. They're in the cafeteria. They're getting a drink from the soda machine. Every now and then, there are times when the teams can have breakfast with them, which is really cool. And we call them the dads.
The dads.
They are dads. It's
they
fitting.
are, and they're incredible human beings. They really are. They're brilliant. They're sharp. They are excellent to work with, but they're just great people.
Yeah, no, I'm really inspired and honored to have known these two guys, and I can't wait to see them launch in space. And I was with you, Lauren, out at SpaceX when we were doing a little tour, and I think you kind of snuck me back in to where they were training, and I got a chance to see them working and training. But when they came back out, I was having lunch, and everyone around was just like, hey, these are our team also.
Yes, yes.
It's really amazing. And Lauren, you talked about what they're like, and they are just two of the most humble people too. I mean, every time I've seen them do an interview, they're getting asked questions about themselves, right? Because they're the stars of the show.
Right.
They're the ones getting on the rocket, but they always bring it back to the people who made it possible for them. They're
Right.
always talking about the NASA team, the SpaceX team working behind the scenes that have sacrificed so much to keep them safe and made sure that they are always vigilant. And I know we've talked about this before too, but if you're not looking for something wrong, you're not doing it right. So the teams, even now, they're always looking for any little thing that could go wrong to make sure that Bob and Doug are safe when they strap in and get going.
Absolutely. Around the office, we don't just say, oh, we're launching a rocket, we're launching Dragon. We say, we're launching Bob and Doug. And that human element of this is essentially leveling SpaceX up in a major way today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, all the technology, all the hardware means nothing if it's all about the people.
Absolutely. And, we see just a handful of folks in the room, and we've acknowledged the distance that Mr. Musk and Mr. Bridenstine are standing from the astronauts, and of course they have masks on. This wouldn't really look that much different, though, even if we were not in the midst of a pandemic. I mean, Leland, you know very well what it's like to live in quarantine, getting ready for a mission, and so this coronavirus situation has just kind of underscored the importance of quarantine and keeping the astronauts protected. But can you speak a little bit about what it's like to live in quarantine, getting ready for a mission?
Yeah, we start in quarantine about a week before we come down to the Cape to get ready for launch. And I think that everyone around you that comes to the crew dinners, they have to get checked by the doctors. And so we really make this a very serious thing, even without a pandemic going on. But I think once we get down here, like we have these crew parties for our families, and we can't go to the parties, we have to FaceTime into the parties, but that's a very serious thing, and we only see our spouses at the beach house and have a dinner and celebrate this momentous moment. But it's a very serious thing, even without pandemics going on.
Absolutely. And obviously, Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken are two of the best at what they do, and it's starting to really sink in that the mission is on as you see them in their suits there.
It's getting real. It's getting real.
So I remember the very first time that I saw Bob and Doug in these suits at a crew training event at SpaceX. Not only did they look really awesome, astronauts tend to look pretty cool, but the suits looked like they were from the future. Our team designed the spacesuits to maximize safety and functionality with a little bit of style. And so here's Chris Trigg telling us how the SpaceX spacesuit came to be.
I think one of the things that was important in the development of the suit was to make it easy to use, something that the crew just has to literally plug in when they sit down, and then the suit kind of takes care of itself from there. So the suit is really kind of one part of the bigger Dragon system. It's really part of the vehicle. So we think of it as kind of a suit seat system. So the seat that the crew is in and the suit are in a lot of ways working together. And so it made sense that we were designing Dragon in-house to also design the suit.
Our spacesuit is completely designed in-house. It's built here in Hawthorne, California, in the same building as the rocket and the capsule. The spacesuit is custom-made for each crew member, and that is to optimize the fit for the crew member.
We definitely wanted to innovate, and we wanted it to look inspiring, but first and foremost, we wanted it to be safe and reliable. The spacesuit's primary purpose is to protect the crew in the unlikely event that the cabin were to depressurize. But the suit does a number of additional things. It provides cooling and communication to the crew inside of the suit, provides them hearing protection, and the outer layer of the suit is flame resistant, so it provides flame protection as well. When the crew gets in the capsule, they get in their seats and they plug the suit into the umbilical that's attached to the seat. And the umbilical is providing everything that the suit needs. So it provides the avionics or electronics for communications, it's providing the air to cool the suit, and then it also provides gas when needed to pressurize the suit. So it's really a single point that lets the suit do all the things that it needs to do. We designed the helmet in-house. The helmet serves a number of different functions. Obviously, it's protecting the crew's head and it's retaining gas like the rest of the suit, but it also houses the microphones as well as the valves that are regulating pressure in the suit. We had to design the gloves so that they would work with the touchscreens, but the gloves also still had to do a number of other things like the rest of the suit. So all of those things had to come together within the glove. It'll be obviously really amazing to see Bob and Doug in their flight suits, and I think one of the things that's cool about the suit is it's not just a piece of hardware, it's not just a suit, it's a very personal thing. It's Bob's suit and it's Doug's suit. And so seeing the two of them in their suits using it in flight will be just a really amazing thing.
Hey, now that you've had a look at the development of the spacesuit, we thought it'd be pretty cool to show you where our astronauts train to be able to fly on board Dragon.
Yesterday, Dan and I had a chance to spend some time in our crew training facility here in Hawthorne, so let's take a look.
So we are up in the crew training area. This is right where Bob and Doug have been training over the last several months and even years to get ready for this flight. There's a couple of things in the room that we're going to show you real quick. We're going to start off with the cockpit simulator. Now, there are 4 seats inside of Dragon the way it's configured. The 2 in the middle are where the commander and the pilot's seat. So this is the commander seat. This is where Doug Hurley is for this flight. This is the pilot seat. This is where Bob Behnken is. Once they're in their suits, they can plug them into the seats. They get communications, breathing air, pressurized gas for the suits themselves. Everything just integrated into Dragon systems. But most importantly, right in front of them, we have this set of 3 displays. And these are the touchscreen displays that give them access to Dragon. This is their window into their spacecraft. They're able to see all of the different systems. They're able to take control of Dragon. They're able to see where they are over the Earth or in relation to the space station. They're able to see even when thrusters are firing. And if you keep your eye on this little dot, you've been hearing some background noise. We actually have recorded noises of those thrusters that they're able to hear and see in real time while they're training. There's also some hard-coded buttons for some of the more important things, like the pyrotechnics, if they need to cut the main parachute after they land in the water, and of course the launch escape system. So they spend a lot of time in here just getting familiar with Dragon's control systems, but you need a bigger picture. You need to put it all together. And to do that, we can come over here where you just want something a little more higher fidelity, where you have everything from the seats, the displays, the cargo, all of it, just to really make sure you're training so by the time you get up to space, it feels like you've almost been there before. And that's where we're going to find Jesse.
Oh, hey there. I was just training for my next mission to space. But since you're here, let me show you around. This is our flight simulator, which is basically a one-to-one replica of a Crew Dragon vehicle as far as the functionality and the interior. So the astronauts can get suited up, they can practice entering and exiting the vehicle, they can climb into their seats and actually get strapped in. These seats recline back so that they can access these display panels, which are actually functional. And then they can practice flying the vehicle, manually docking with the space station. They can open and close the hatch. And basically, by the time they get to a day like today, they felt like they've already done the mission 100 times before. Well, I'm going to get back to training, so let's get back to launch.
We're coming up on T-minus 3.5 hours, and all continues to go well for today's launch. Now at the launch pad, Falcon 9 is powered on. Engine and stage checkouts were performed several hours ago. Everything's looking good on those. Now we're currently monitoring telemetry and pressurizing the gas storage vessels on board both the first and second stages. And as I mentioned, the good news is there's nothing significant to report on the rocket. Now on top of the Falcon 9 in the picture there, behind the crew access arm is the Dragon spacecraft. The spacecraft is ready for the crew who you saw suiting up. They'll be walking out here shortly. We'll bring that to you. Functional checkouts of the spacecraft were performed in preparation for the crew arrival. Most recently, the Dragon propellant system was pressurized to the final flight pressure just about an hour ago. And currently, all spacecraft systems are go. Right now on the pad, you can see some silhouettes in the access arm. The ingress technician team is up there. They've opened the side hatch and now getting ready for the crew to arrive a little later this afternoon. Now the Air Force range is supporting us today with air and sea space clearance. They've got no issues at this time. We're also releasing weather balloons. The initial balloons have been released. They don't give us a go for launch, but they start to tell us that things in the upper altitude are acceptable if this trend continues. So while we're going to wait on those results to give us a better idea, all the way down to about T-minus 30 minutes, we are anticipating acceptable weather for launch at the upper altitudes. And as you heard earlier, at the ground level, things look like they'll be improving through the afternoon as well as downrange. So things are looking good with both Falcon and Dragon. The weather is cooperating as we count down to liftoff. And we want to see where you're following today's launch from. So let's jump over to Tahira at our social desk.
Thanks, John. And I can tell you the excitement is really building online. Right now, we're up to 700,000 people viewing this broadcast. And Launch America is the #3 trending on Twitter in the US. So let's take a closer look at what's being said. Looks like we have Astro Joan, who is just so excited to be on the Space Coast and watching this launch from her driveway. And with that, so jealous to all of you in Florida right now that have the ability to just step outside and witness Bob and Doug make this historic moment. Let's take a look at another. So we have Dave Farrell, and this is the Dave Farrell, the bassist from Linkin Park, which is just sick in general. And it looks like his kids coined the term nerve-sighted for today's mission, and this is perfect. I was actually looking for a word to just describe the jitters and excitement leading up to launch. So Dave, thank you for that. I will be stealing that for today's show. So let's take just a broader look at the conversation online right now with this heat map of the United States. So you'll see that the more purple states show the states with the most mentions of Launch America. And with that, it looks like the Florida Space Coast is really coming alive for today's launch, followed by California, home of SpaceX, and Texas, where our mission control is. So great to see all these home teams showing up for today's historic mission. I want to toss it back to Florida, though, because I have to reiterate, if you have a chance to go to Florida and watch one of these launches in person, it's great. I watched my first one last year, and that was the uncrewed test flight of today's mission. And even then, uncrewed, I literally cried. I mean, you cannot describe the emotion that comes over to see this in person, so highly recommend if you get a chance, go on down to Florida. For those of you just tuning in, we are using the hashtag #LaunchAmerica on NASA's social media channels, so join the conversation with us and maybe we'll show it during the broadcast. So earlier in the show, we polled users on Twitter to see which of you watched the final shuttle launch in 2011, and the results are in. So, looks like about 40% of you were able to watch the last shuttle launch, but 60% of you weren't. And I have to say, I'm not gonna lie, I'm with those 60%. This will be my first time watching humans lift off to space from the US, and I am not kidding when I tell you I am literally thrilled to do this and share it with you all today. So the next question we have for you, as Bob and Doug finish their final suit checks, we would like to know if you were in the room with them right now, what would you say to them on social media? Use the hashtag #LaunchAmerica and we'll show it later on in the show. Now let's head back to Marie at Kennedy. Marie?
All right, thanks to Hira. We're looking live at the back doors of the O&C building. Those are the iconic doors that Bob and Doug are going to be walking out in just a minute. But first, we want to pause to honor today's efforts with our national anthem. And the incomparable Kelly Clarkson treats us now with her virtual rendition from her home to yours.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
And any moment now, we are going to see Bob and Doug walking out. We're looking at the pad right now, but you guys, that just gave me chills listening to that. And we saw them getting into the elevator, so they're making their way down to the first floor where they're going to be walking out of those doors any moment now.
Just so exciting. And to think, back in 11 years ago when I was going down that elevator and about to walk out those doors, it just brings back these memories of getting human beings to space, working together as a team, and having this entire community around you helping you get off the planet.
Yeah, and Leland, I know you have a really cool memory about somebody special that you saw when you walked out of those doors.
Oh my goodness, Marie, when I walked out of those doors, my chemistry teacher was right there from high school who inspired me to be a scientist. And she said, "Go Leland." And that's what's going to happen when they come out. These people that, their families are going to be there. I wish other people could be there, but it's just an amazing moment.
Yeah, and the shot you just saw there with people carefully spaced apart, we saw them walk out right before the anthem started. It was Vice President Mike Pence along with Elon left the building just ahead of the crew. So they are standing, we're looking now at the doors, but they're standing just right of that across from the Teslas. There's also a designated spot for Doug and Bob's immediate families. There's that shot now. So we're looking at the back of Elon Musk, Jim Bridenstine, and Vice President Mike Pence. Of course, there's a small group of media there also, and so we've kind of blocked this very carefully to maintain social distancing and those that can't have the masks on. But there's the Teslas waiting for them. They got the meatball. There's the worm in the background and the worm on the back of the Teslas. So, Leland, I know we were talking about this earlier. You had some mixed feelings about the worm, right?
I mean, the worm, the meatball, when I was at NASA Langley, we changed over to the meatball from the worm. So, Lauren, I know you love the worm. It's
worm all day.
All day, really?
All day.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I love that the worm is so retro, and it's only fitting that it would be making its way back, bringing the historic just opulence of NASA's past to the present.
I'll let you have that.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, thank you.
But I mean,
Thank
the
you.
chevron and the meatball goes back to Langley's tradition when it was, in aviation, and that gets back to that heritage and that history too. So
I guess, sure. Okay, truce?
Orbits.
Truce.
I feel like this is a microcosm of what's happening online about the worm. But the meatball's not going away. It's a worm meatball partnership.
There we go.
There we go.
So there's another view there of the crosswalk. There is where Bob and Doug are going to walk out any moment. Of course, they're going to get their photo taken by all the paparazzi there, and we're just standing by for them to walk out. I'm going to check the time, actually, 1:13. So if they walk out any minute now, they're going to be right on schedule to start their final goodbyes and waving to folks, and I'm sure they're going to pause for a photo op, but this is just really amazing. Haven't seen this site since 2011 with STS-135. Of course, Doug Hurley was the pilot on that mission, so this is a really incredible moment.
Yeah, and one of the crewmates that was with him was Rex Walham that we're going to talk to later, and we have. Oh, here they come.
Oh, here they are.
Here they come, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. They've each made this journey twice before for the space shuttle missions, but they've never done this in a SpaceX spacesuit. They've never done this together, and they've never done this on their way to head to a commercially built rocket and spacecraft to head to space.
Marie, I was looking for that Astro van, and I see these white Teslas with meatballs and worms on them. It's just a new era in space travel.
Oh, yeah, they're riding in Tesla Model X's. They've been equipped with cooling units, so once they sit inside, that umbilical that I was referring to earlier will connect to the spacesuit to provide cooling while they're inside of the vehicle.
And you can see them talking and waving with their families now. Wow. We just saw them do a virtual hug with their sons.
There's Megan and Karen and their sons, yeah.
They're the dads.
The dads, yeah.
It's so awesome.
Bob blowing his family a kiss. Doug actually got to take his wife and son up to the pad on the tower. Yesterday they tweeted out a photo. That was so cool.
I saw that picture, and it had a prominent worm in the picture, right?
Yes.
Telling you, worm all day. So they're climbing through those DeLorean doors of the Model X. This is totally from the future.
Are they stock? Are they stock Teslas?
And then you see in the front seat there, that's our flight surgeon. He's climbing in, and the suit technicians, there's one, Chris Trigg right there, number 12. He is buckling in. They're both, the two suit techs are buckling in, Bob and Doug, and they're connecting that umbilical.
And Lauren, I know you mentioned this earlier, but for folks that maybe weren't watching then or can't remember, I mean, we're in Florida. It's super hot, super muggy. So how are they staying cool?
There are these portable cooling units. We had one at the ONC building, two at the ONC building. There are 2 in the Teslas. There'll be 2 in the elevators, and then 2 in the white room when they arrive on the crew arm. So we're just keeping the cool air flowing through the suits. There's actually ducting integrated into the suits to keep them cool. And you can see they're saying goodbye to their families. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome that their families get to come up to the window and obviously get a little closer than everybody else.
There's Megan and her son. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
These are precious moments. This is what it's all about, as I mentioned before. It's about the people. It's about the families and working together as one community to get Doug and Bob launching off to the cosmos, to the space station.
Yeah, it's emotional. It's emotional watching that.
It really is. Here we go.
Now, as we see the convoy begin the journey to the pad, 39A, we are thinking about each and every one of you, our colleagues and friends at SpaceX and NASA, who have had a hand in seeing the Crew Dragon commercial crew program come to life.
And we wish every single one of you could be here up close to see this, but we want you to be a part of this journey regardless of where you are watching today. And so for the next few minutes, while they're making their way to the pad, we want to highlight those people whose hands and words and thoughts built all that we see here today. And we hope all of you watching can feel that pride that each of these NASA and SpaceX team members has for today.
This is Laura Segura from the Commercial Crew Program. We're so excited about this historical day. Congratulations on being a part of the very first mission for human spaceflight, commercial human spaceflight ever. We're behind you, Bob and Doug.
I'm Nicole from SpaceX in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Congratulations to SpaceX for hitting another major milestone, and safe travels to Bob and Doug.
Bob and Doug, as the launch vehicle chief engineer, we've got a lot of our launch vehicle team here to wish you a very wonderful space ride on a Falcon 9 coming up to Demo 2. We're so excited for you. And launch America. It's time to launch. Let's go. Right.
Hi, this is Perla from Hawthorne headquarters. We want to wish Bob and Doug a safe trip to the International Space Station. Go Dragon!
It's been 9 years in the making. This is such a historic time, and our team has worked so hard, and we're very excited to be here. Go Bob and Doug!
Hi, this is Sam from McGregor, Texas. Go Bob and Doug, go NASA, and go SpaceX.
Sean O'Rourke from Johnson Space Center. Bob and Doug, wishing you a great flight, and just wanted to tell you good luck.
Hi, I'm Dustin Kamak with NASA Kennedy's Communications and Public Engagement Directorate, and we all want to wish Bob and Doug safe travels and Godspeed. You are both an inspiration to us all. Now, let's get out there and launch America. Let's do it. Come on, launch America.
And we are following the convoy. And Leland, Lauren, I don't know about you guys, but I'm so glad that we had the chance to hear from the NASA and SpaceX teams that have been working behind the scenes, because, Lauren, I know you know this all too well. I mean, these people have been working not only for, the last, since 2014 when SpaceX won this contract, but, I mean, working long hours, long reviews. Coronavirus happened, and then they're homeschooling their kids, still trying to get through all the final checkouts and closeouts to get to today, and we made it. And now we're just waiting on the weather, but it's just great that they got a chance to wish Bob and Doug good luck.
Absolutely. It is a bummer that we can't all be here in person, but to have that opportunity with that wall of cheers is pretty cool. And you're right. I mean, it's been years of extremely hard work. Fortunately, we've had little milestones along the way, like Demo 1 and IFA, the in-flight abort mission, but it was all leading up to this. And I speak for all of my friends and colleagues that are still working on this program. Today is a career just high for all of those people, if not the pinnacle of it.
Absolutely, and I know Doug and Bob appreciate them so much. And as they continue to make their way to the pad, the next astronauts to make this journey are also watching very closely. NASA astronauts Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, and Mike Hopkins, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Soichi Noguchi will also be flying. They'll be in the Crew 1 mission a little later this year. Of course, that's after Bob and Doug return home. Now, Crew 1 will be the second space flight for Walker and Hopkins, who each flew on the Russian Soyuz. And it will be the first space flight for Glover and the third space flight for Noguchi. He flew on both the space shuttle and the Soyuz previously. Now, the Crew 1 mission will be the first in a series of rotational flights to station after Demo 2, once NASA certifies the SpaceX systems for regular crew flights. And right now, Victor and Mike are following along from the Johnson Space Center in Houston, and they are standing by to talk to NASA's Daryl Nail. Daryl, are you? All right, I'm sorry, we don't have Daryl, but as we continue to follow the convoy, we've got actually a little chase car following the convoy. I think we're going to be actually talking to Victor and Mike from right here. Victor and Mike, are you there?
We are here.
All right, hi guys. I'm just going to ask you first. You're going to be two of the next people to get on board Crew Dragon. So what are all your thoughts and feelings as you're watching Bob and Doug in the Tesla right now?
As you can imagine, there's a lot of emotions. Of course, we're excited for Bob and Doug, excited for NASA, excited for SpaceX, and really the whole country. A lot of pride in what it's taken to get to this moment, all the thousands of people that have contributed to getting to this moment. But then there's also a bit of sense of duty of business as usual. So for us, we're going to be watching, we're going to be listening, we're going to be learning, and all of that to help get us prepared for when it's our turn.
And your mission called Crew 1. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it was also great to see them walk out just now and say goodbye to their families and do the virtual hugs. That was great. There are a lot of emotions, but that's probably the best one.
And Victor and Mike, I know recently you had Shannon Walker and Soichi Noguchi also assigned to the Crew 1 mission with you. What can you tell us about them and your relationship with them and your training so far with them?
Yeah, you know, I'm very excited about Crew 1. We've got a very experienced crew. You guys hit on that a little bit earlier. Of course, Shannon, she's been with NASA for around 30 years. She's been with the astronaut office for more than 15 years, and of course Soyuz long duration, so she's seen a lot around here. Soichi, you know, with Jackson, he's done it all. 1996 when he first became an astronaut, shuttle, space station, short duration, long duration, spacewalks, you name it. And so, you know, we kind of late in the game here had our full crew complement, and so it's really helped getting them in with all of that experience. It's really streamlined the process for our becoming more cohesive as a crew.
Yeah, you know, they really hit the ground running. We showed up to our first sims, and it felt like we had done it several times before. And so it's great because we do have a lot to get done. We not only have to learn to fly and to operate the Crew Dragon spacecraft that Bob and Doug are going to do later today, God willing, we also have to be ready to do all of the things that a crew on board the space station does. The spacewalks, the research, the basic upkeep of the space station. And so we also have all that training going on as well. And that's what we've been doing for the past several months together.
And now I have a specific question for Mike. I know that you've flown on the Russian Soyuz and not specifically on Space Shuttle, but can you talk about the tradition of the ride out that we're seeing now?
Yeah, the ride out, you know, it's very symbolic. It's symbolic of that transition, the transition from months and years of preparation to the actual execution of the mission itself. And so for the astronauts, for Bob and Doug right now, it gives them an opportunity to reflect on all of the work that it took to get to this moment, but then it also gives them time to focus on the job, to really mentally prepare for game day. And then when you think about DM2 and this particular mission, you know, that's this symbolic of this transition for we have not had human launch capability in the U.S. to a new age of government and private partnerships that are going to be launching humans into low Earth orbit and beyond here from the United States of America.
And a question for Victor, because I know, if all goes well, when you fly on Crew 1 a little later this year, it's going to be your first trip to space. Can you put yourself in the seat right now, in the car with Bob and Doug? I mean, walk me through what that's going to feel like for you, knowing you're headed to the launch pad, you're going to be launching into space for the very first time.
You know, it'll be tough to, or it is tough now to imagine what those feelings are going to be like. We were able to simulate that and run through a day of launch exercise and ride out in the Teslas to the launch pad, up the elevator, up the set of stairs, and out the crew arm to where the vehicle would be. And just that day was amazing to me. We were able to do it with the full convoy and to see what that would be like. And that was overwhelming after being a kid watching something similar to that on television. And so I can't imagine what it's going to feel like on our actual day, but I tell you what, I'm looking forward to it. And again, to go back to that moment where Bob and Doug got to say goodbye to their boys, and Karen and Megan, I can't wait to see my kids standing there. It's something that I look forward to. It's going to be great.
Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, thank you so much, and we can't wait to wish you well and cheer you along on that journey. Lauren?
Thank you.
So that was so cool. Now, as you're watching this live from wherever you are, you can send a shout out to the crew with a like or a comment on Twitter or Instagram with the hashtag LaunchAmerica and be a part of this moment.
And so, Leland, I mean, it looks like the convoy is headed past the vehicle assembly building. We're looking at the pad now. They've got probably about 3 more miles to go at this point. But what do you think that is going through their minds right now?
Well, you know, I was watching some video of Bob and Doug, the kind of the lighter side, and I would imagine that the two of them, they've trained so hard, they are meticulous at what they do. They might be telling jokes like we did when we were in the Astro van heading to Pad 39A. You've been together for so long, you know the systems, you know exactly what you're doing, and we had a moment of levity where we would tell jokes, and we wouldn't even tell the whole joke, we would just say the number, because we had said them so many times. And, you know, we were high-fiving, we were chest bumping, we were, you know, getting ready mentally. But it was that moment of just, we've made all this preparation, and now it's game day. And we're ready to get up in that vehicle and go to space.
And now we're going to go out to Hawthorne for the last leg of the convoy's trek to the launch pad. Dan?
Hey, thanks, Marie. So at this point, the convoy is getting really close to Pad 39A, and pretty soon they're going to be entering what's known as the BDA, or the Blast Danger Area. Before any pad technicians, engineers, or obviously our astronauts enter this area around the launch pad, SpaceX and NASA teams do some internal go, no-go polls just to make sure everything is clear. And you already saw people on the arm, and the crew's moving in, so everything is clear.
This storied launch pad, which has been the beginning point for so many firsts, is the perfect backdrop for today's historic launch that marks a new first and a new era in human spaceflight. But with new vehicles being designed and launched, this launch pad required some major upgrades.
That's right, and Daryl Nail is going to show us a couple of those upgrades at Pad 39A, where SpaceX completed a 21st century makeover to help launch us into the next chapter of human spaceflight.
We're go, same type, we're go. Altitude, velocity, light. Okay, engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle.
Start. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. The final liftoff of Atlantis on the shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
Roger roll, Atlantis.
And you can see on your screen, Bob and Doug are getting very, very close to pad 39A. In addition to these launch pad upgrades, SpaceX also made spaceflight. And specifically, SpaceX had to prove a high degree of fault tolerance, meaning that small failures in the system would not lead to mission failure. Falcon 9 was already able to handle engine failure, but new emphasis was put on making sure that a failure throughout any phase of launch would not mean mission failure. And that's a really cool view on your screen with Bob and Doug getting out of their Teslas. That is amazing.
Score on Falcon 1 T-minus 2
and
hours, 58
this
minutes.
goes down
Crew has
all the
arrived
way
at the pad
to
on schedule.
latches, control valves, electronics, and wiring, and so much more to keep them safe.
All right, well, with the astronauts now on location at pad 39A, Marie, Lauren, Leland, take us through the crew making their final steps towards that Dragon spacecraft.
All right, thanks, Dan. That was really cool to see. We can see the Teslas on the screen there. They're going to stop for Bob and Doug to take a little nature break before they make their way up to the pad. And we're expecting it should be about T-minus 2 hours and 55 minutes, so just under 3 minutes from now, we should hear a formal announcement on the loops that the crew is on the pad. So we'll quiet down to listen for that when we get a little closer. But Lauren, you didn't get a chance to mention while they were driving out there, they have a very cool playlist they had on the way out, right?
Yeah, I remember Bob tweeting, what should I listen to on the way out? So here's what they chose. The first is AC/DC's Back in Black. I think he actually tweeted that one, or someone recommended it, which is super cool. And the reason being, they are back. Then they also listened to the elevator music from the Blues Brothers film, that song "Girl from Ipanema." And
that one?
I believe so, yeah. Got another career. Hey. That and meatball loving. But the sort of symbolizing the fact that they're waiting. And the third song was the Star Spangled Banner, nice. The Army French horns version, for very obvious reasons, that one.
Yeah, I got to set the mood, set the tone, right, Leland? You know all about that.
Little meatball, all good.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make me come over there, Lauren.
So we're looking now at the Crew Dragon capsule on top of the Falcon 9 rocket, the impressive crew access arm. That's that black and white kind of hallway you see there. That's how the crew make their way over to Crew Dragon to climb inside. And that Falcon 9 rocket stands about 230 feet tall. The Crew Dragon trunk, from the bottom of the trunk to the top of the nose cone, that's another 27 feet on top of that. So here in just a couple of minutes, Bob and Doug are going to be making their way up in an elevator. They don't have to climb the whole way. It's just about 10 feet of stairs at the last leg of that trip. And lots of people are weighing in on social media. This person says it's happening, and I can't read the rest of it right now, but lots of people really getting pumped using the hashtag #LaunchAmerica online. Somebody says they're watching live now and wishing us a fantastic launch. We certainly hope so. Last we heard was a 50-50 chance with the weather, so it's going to be exciting. And it looks like, I'm not sure if that one is Bob or Doug in this one here. Can't tell from this view, but it looks like one of them is getting ready to get out of the Tesla in just a minute.
Lauren, our suits our pumpkin suits had different colors for what mission position you had. Do these suits have colors to designate the two astronauts? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of, but their names are on the suits.
Maybe that helps. Well, we had names too, but
Yeah.
but I mean, if you're trying to find out which suit that you have, I guess it's only two of them, and it could be up to seven astronauts, all right?
Dragon is capable of carrying 7, but for NASA missions, it's 4.
It's just 4. Okay.
Yes.
There go those doors. I'm going to call them the DeLorean doors. Can I call them that?
Sure. I think that's totally fair game. Acknowledge the inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Again, we're looking at the base level there. And Leland, I know we talked about this. You were out here last week and we were talking about how the pad looks so different from the shuttle days. Can you talk about what you remember and kind of how it's different now?
Yeah, I mean, the form and the function. I mean, this black pad with the white ticking and, it's a really beautiful, you think about science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And I think, SpaceX has done an incredible job of making things look really beautiful and functional and everything just fits perfectly. And I think the launch pad, there were hoses and things hanging off, but this is a very sleek and elegant and kind of futuristic look at the next era of space travel. And, I just love seeing these Teslas versus the Astrovan. Are they doing selfies?
Looks like they're trying to strain to see the top of the Crew Dragon, just taking in the sight.
It's pretty high.
And I don't know if you caught this one. We could see it briefly on the shot, but the license plate says ISS BND, ISS bound.
Oh,
you
nice.
Follow?
Nice.
Yeah. And hopefully they will be today. We just need the weather to say, it looks pretty nice right now, right? But obviously it's not just what the weather conditions are here. They've got to think about downrange in case of an abort, make sure it's okay for recovery if we get into a situation like that, which is unlikely.
So this elevator is going to take them up to level 255. It's not 255 floors, but that's 255 feet. And from there, once they get up there, and this elevator is pretty zippy, so they'll get up there pretty quickly, they'll get out, and they'll walk up another flight of stairs to level 265, and that's where they will greet the crew arm.
And I don't know, well, obviously Leland's been in the elevator. Lauren, I'm pretty sure you've been out there too, but the first time I rode in the elevator, I was like, whoa, we're really moving in this.
Pull some G's.
A little bit of a jolt when it first goes.
Yeah, you get used to it. And then the jolt is a little bit more extreme when you get in the rocket and take off. So.
Just a little primer. It's a primer.
The doors are opening. And here they come.
It's a beautiful view up there too of the, all of the surroundings in Florida and this national wildlife retreat that we have here. But getting ready for the business at hand of getting in the rocket and heading to the cosmos.
And those are the stairs Lauren mentioned. They're at it's the 255-foot level right now.
Yes.
I think I said that right. And now they're headed up the stairs to the 265-foot level. That's a level that will take them to where the crew access arm is in the white room.
Yeah, that's the view right there that they're looking at. And Lauren, what are those chevrons, those white chevrons on the floor? What do they lead to?
Those are basically highlighting the exit path. So in the event that that anyone up there needed to get away ASAP, they follow those arrows to where escape baskets await them. There's 7 baskets, and they'll hop in there, and it's kind of like a zip line. They'll slide all the way down from that fixed service structure down to the ground, safe and away from the rocket.
Great.
And at the top right of your screen where you see them, there's actually a phone right up there next to the worm. There's the worm again, Leland. But there's
I'm okay
a phone.
with that. I'm okay with that now.
It really pops up there.
Yeah, it's like it belongs there or something.
It's funny, isn't it? Leland, tell us about the phone. What's the significance of the phone up there?
Yeah, I mean, you can call family members that you maybe weren't able to come to the launch, and in this case, there are quite a few of them. But it's a last minute to say goodbye and say that you're going to talk to them when you get to space.
Absolutely. And again, they're just kind of taking in the sights before they go into the white room, and the pad team is there. You can see them. They're in black with the white numbers on their back. They're all members of the pad team. They're going to be helping them when they get into ingress. Actually, we're at T minus 2 hours and 50 minutes right now, at about T minus 2 hours and 35 minutes. So just under 15 minutes from now is when the astronauts will ingress. That's the term we use for climbing into Dragon. And of course, they will have the assistance of the suit techs and get buckled in. And so we want to head over to Hawthorne now for a preview of what's in store for not just Bob and Doug, but future space travelers.
Shortly after we begin to regularly fly NASA astronauts to and from the space station, SpaceX will also begin flying private passengers to station and beyond using Dragon.
That's right. NASA is going to be enabling up to 2 private astronaut missions to visit the space station each year, just as part of our support of a broader economy in low Earth orbit. It's just one of the many ways NASA is opening access for companies to manufacture products in microgravity, for new commercial modules in space, and to enable more people to be able to explore the stars firsthand.
And the more people out there exploring the stars, the closer we get to becoming a multi-planetary species. Earlier, we showed you a first-hand look at where you would train if you were to fly with us on board Dragon, but now let's take a peek inside of the spacecraft itself.
When we wanted to take Dragon and make it human-rated, I think we took a different approach to spaceship design than has previously been done, because we wanted this to feel like a 21st century spaceship. We wanted it to inspire another generation of astronauts. Really, everything when you look at Dragon was driven by function. We took into account everything from the placement of all the cargo supplies to the light rail on the top, doubled as a handhold. Probably one of the biggest features of Dragon are the touch screens on the inside. We designed them not just to be very functional, but with a user experience in mind. It's very intuitive to know what we need to do at any given moment in time. When I think about comfort for the astronauts, it's really every aspect of how you could interact with the spaceship that comes to mind. We have 3 different seat sizes. We even go so far as molding the foam around the astronaut's body so that there's not any pressure points, and it's just generally a pleasurable journey to space. Dragon is a spaceship that's all about safety and reliability. We designed it to be 2-fault tolerant, which means that any 2 things could fail. So I could lose a flight computer and a thruster, and I could still bring the crew back home safely. We also added a launch escape system. If anything goes wrong on ascent, the crew can get away from Falcon and get picked up safely. I've worked on Dragon since 2012. When I see Dragon lift off, I think I'm going to feel a buildup of emotion of 8 years of working with some of the best engineers and technicians across the country that put their heart and mind into making this incredible moment happen for everybody.
Ingress has started on schedule.
We see them signing. Looks like they're signing something in there right now.
Yeah, we give them a black Sharpie to sign the white room. It's starting a new tradition.
Yeah, we didn't do that. That's nice.
That's awesome.
It's a good tradition.
Yeah.
And while we were in the video, we saw Bob and Doug walk down the crew access arm. Leland, it's like that, futuristic look that you talked about. I mean, what did you think seeing that and how that kind of compare and contrast what that was like during shuttle?
It's really beautiful, I think. I mean, back when I was flying on shuttle, everything looked. Oh, look at the thumbs up from Bob. He's getting excited. Just a few little photos at the end there, but it's just a totally different era. I mean, the SpaceX team is really looking to make something futuristic. It's looking like something from the George Jetsons or from other movies that you've seen on television and at the movies. And I think it's something that inspires our country and inspires our children especially to see that they want to be these astronauts. They want to study hard and be that next generation of explorers launching from Cape Canaveral in a SpaceX rocket, or working for NASA, or working for SpaceX, or any of the other companies that are trying to get off planet. And I think that this change in the way that we're doing business is going to be a really great way of getting more people to the table to fly in space.
Yeah, that was really important to us. Dragon, we see it as a 21st century spaceship. It needs to look like a 21st century spaceship. It flies like a 21st century spaceship. So of course, the ground support equipment should look like it's from the same era. The suits do. Mm-hmm. All of that sort of future-facing technology and aesthetic is super important to us. Actually, right now, you can see that duct in the hands of member number 5 there. That is an ECS duct, or Environmental Control System duct. Once this original, who just went in? Was that Doug or Bob?
I think that was Doug.
Okay. Doug
that was
just climbed
Doug,
in.
yeah.
That is awesome.
He's ahead of schedule. Somebody tell him to climb back out.
Booking. It is great.
He's ready. He's like Leland. We were joking earlier about it. We were going to have to buckle Leland into his seat here to keep him from running out there.
Yeah, if we had stayed outside, I was going to swim across the moat and run over and get in the vehicle with Bob and Doug.
All right, now Bob's going in.
Yeah.
This is great. So the suit technicians are helping the crew climb inside. They're holding back the hatch seals to protect the seals on the hatch, but also making sure that the crew doesn't hit their head or anything on the way in. Even though they have helmets, we still don't want that to happen.
And they climbed in a couple minutes earlier than we expected them to, but Lauren, that SpaceX has rehearsed this over and over and over again with Bob and Doug, and and I've heard them say, well, we might be a little bit ahead of schedule if we're ready. It just gives them more time to check things out.
Yeah. So right now, what the crew, the suit technicians are doing is they're strapping the crew's feet into these restraints that the boots sit inside of. They're then going to close those 5-point harnesses around them. I know, Leland, you talked about some of the harnessing that you had in the past with the shuttle.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a more sleek design where there's one point to plug in to get cooling, communications, and everything. And we had a 5-point harness. We, had these hoses and things all over the place. But I think this is a much more streamlined look into the future of space travel.
And similar to what was going in the ONC building during the suit checkouts, that seat umbilical is going to connect to the right thigh of the spacesuit. There is a fluid module that is connected to the spacesuit, and that provides fresh cooling air and also nitrox for the leak checks that are going to come up later. But the audio system is also going through that umbilical. Mm-hmm. So while the crew while the suit techs are getting the crew all buckled in, they're going to perform a comm check. And that's, again, similar to what was done at the ONC building, but this time the integrated two-way communications between the astronauts and the ground crew.
And we're going to head back to Hawthorne now, as we just saw Bob and Doug ingress Crew Dragon. Dan?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, it's incredible to see them inside the capsule. If you're just now tuning in, great timing. You're watching our coverage of the mission known as Demonstration Mission 2 or Demo 2. Today, SpaceX and NASA are going to be sending people into orbit on a mission to the International Space Station for the first time from U.S. soil since 2011. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are those astronauts flying in Dragon. They're inside. That's Doug Hurley really close to our screen and Bob Behnken on the further seat away from us.
And they are getting ready to lift off from pad 39A, where Falcon 9 will lift off around or at 4:33 p.m. Eastern Time. They already ascended the tall structure next to the rocket, which is called the fixed service structure, and walked down the corridor known as the crew arm. And now they're already boarded inside of Dragon.
Yeah, right before they got in, we did see them pause for a moment and actually sign the wall. They were in the white room And the white room is just literally that room at the end of the crew arm that has an opening into Dragon. It's the last place on planet Earth where Bob and Doug are standing before they get into Dragon for their ride to the space station.
And the term the white room was first used during NASA Gemini missions, where the room right before entering into the spaceship was painted white. So we've continued the tradition with painting ours white as well, and also started a new tradition. If you just saw, they did sign the white room wall, which is really, really awesome. It's a fairly small area that has room for the crew and a few ground support members to complete cargo load at T-minus 24 hours and crew ingress at T-minus 2 hours and 35 minutes. And ingress is how we refer to the crew boarding Dragon.
And inside the white room, there's also a movable platform that just gets extended out to the capsule just in order to bridge that gap between the crew arm and the Dragon side hatch, just allowing easy entry into Dragon. And as you might expect, the entire area is environmentally controlled just so the Dragon side hatch can be kept open while we're keeping all of that dust, dirt, Florida humidity out of the capsule, making sure it's pristine for the crew. There's also a big seal that's inflated and compressed against the capsule right now just to help maintain that clean environment.
The white room also has lots of tools in order to open the side hatch, complete crew ingress as they're doing right now, and prepare for any contingency or emergency that may be encountered.
And so as we just heard from Lauren and Marie and the team, they're getting into this capsule now. They're getting their seats connected to their suits via that umbilical that's going to give them hardline connections into audio for their comm checks, which are going to be coming up shortly. And again, breathing gas and pressurized nitrox for those suit leak checks. So this will be the second time since getting suited up that they've done these leak checks. We're just kind of all about redundancy and constantly checking our systems as we continue to count down. But I mean, there they are. Right now, we're watching Bob and Doug getting into Dragon, getting strapped in. Before they connected their suits to the actual seats, they did something called a foreign object debris check, or a FOD check. And that just means that they actually get inspected for any substance or debris on their suit that could interfere with those systems on Dragon.
And to help protect against debris, the crew has covers on their boots as well as their umbilical port on their suits that need to be removed before they can ingress. So they've already removed those, and as you can see, they are getting strapped in. And once the FOD check is complete, our commander, Doug Hurley, entered first, and then Bob Behnken followed after him. And they're getting buckled in right now, as you can see on your screen, and attaching their umbilicals to their suits. The umbilicals allow the crew to have comms through their suit and air to help keep them cool, as well as delivers nitrox for suit pressurization. And as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the suit's primary function is to protect the crew in the event of a cabin depressurization.
And just walking through the interior a little bit, there are 4 seats configured inside Dragon right now. They're numbered 1 to 4 from right to left when you're looking at the seats. So we've had a couple of camera views just from the hatchway, so in the white room. If you're looking at that angle, you go from 1 to 4 right to left. Doug Hurley is in seat 2, or the commander seat. Bob Behnken is in seat 3, which is on Crew Dragon is the pilot seat. And then obviously nobody is in seats 1 and 4 today. A Crew Dragon is designed to carry 4 astronauts on these future NASA missions, and we met 2 of the Crew 1 members and heard about their other 2 crew members a little bit earlier. Directly in front of both of our crew members today are 3 touchscreen displays that they're going to use throughout the flight, giving them insight into Dragon systems, seeing any alerts or issues with the vehicle, and if required, taking control and manually flying Dragon. We can see Doug Hurley manipulating those displays right now.
And coming up, the crew will do a comm check to make sure that they can hear mission control, and their seats will be rotated into position for launch so that they can see those display panels right in front of them. So now let's check in with John Insprucker for the latest on the health of both vehicles. Over to you, John.
We're at T-minus 2 hours, 36 minutes, 30 seconds in the countdown for the launch of Falcon 9 with Dragon to the space station. The Dragon launch ops team has completed their major activities to prepare the spacecraft for the astronauts. Checkouts are complete of major systems, including the escape system. And as you can see, ingress of the astronauts well underway. They're hooking their suits up to the various cabin systems. Right now on Dragon, there are no issues in work. Comm checks will be coming up shortly on the Dragon spacecraft with the crew. We might be able to hear some of that, and we'll bring it to you as it happens. Now, currently, the Falcon 9 team is preparing for their final checkouts and propellant load. Checkouts are due to begin at T-minus 2 hours. That's when the majority of the launch crew will actually get on console officially in Fire Room 4 at Kennedy Space Center. Currently on Falcon 9, all systems are go. The Air Force range continues to report no problems with air and sea space clearance. Everything's looking good. Roadblocks are up around the launch pads. The weather forecast continues to be acceptable, but something we're going to watch all the way through. We're not only looking at weather at the launch site, but we are looking around the world. We need to make sure conditions are acceptable if Dragon has to splash down in the Atlantic in case of an escape. We're also monitoring contingency splashdown locations if the crew had to come back to Earth before docking with the space station. Right now, those conditions are getting better as we go through the day. At the launch pad, things continue to be a 60% probability of violating the conditions, or 40% chance, if you're an optimist, of good weather. But right now, the clock is continuing to count down. All systems are go. We're just inside T-minus 2 hours, 35 minutes.
All right, now as Bob and Doug finish their ingress procedures and get comfortable inside Dragon, we're going to continue to listen for those comm checks. They should be coming up in just a little bit. But right now, I'm joined now by SpaceX's Jessica Jensen and Lars Blackmore just to discuss a little bit more about what make Dragon and Falcon 9 a 21st century launch vehicle. So first off, thank you so much for joining me today. Jessica, I'll start with you.
Yeah.
Walk me through kind of Dragon's life history and how we got to where we are today.
Sure. So Dragon was designed from scratch 12 years ago by SpaceX. It was designed to carry cargo to and from the International Space Station. And what that means is 12 years ago wasn't that long ago. So we got to use state-of-the-art materials, state-of-the-art, computer processors. So really, Dragon, to start off with, is already a modern advanced spacecraft. But then there's two other parts of it also that really led to commercial crew. One part of it was that we actually were able to man-rate cargo Dragon while it's in the vicinity of the space station and attached to the space station. So that was a huge learning curve for crew. We human-rated a spacecraft for a portion of the mission, and then for crew, you just have to obviously expand it for the whole mission. And then the last part was Cargo Dragon has been this amazing test bed for commercial crew. And what that means is we were able to test out things like heat shield materials and parachute materials on Cargo Dragon before they ever flew on Crew Dragon.
Very cool. And that's just one part of the equation. Lars, walk us through, again, just the flight history of Falcon 9 from the humble beginnings to where we are today.
Well, Falcon 9 first flew almost 10 years ago today. And even though the first version of that rocket couldn't carry humans, the fundamental design was made with that goal in mind. Over the course of 87 launches, we've steadily improved the rocket so that now it has twice the payload to orbit that we started out with. We can land and reuse the first stage in the fairing, and most importantly for today, we have the reliability that we need for humans. Now, what's interesting is that reliability has come from steady upgrades and almost a decade of flight experience. But it's actually quite hard to prove reliability. This is something that the commercial airline industry has been grappling with for decades. And just like them, we rely on lots and lots of testing. So for instance, if you take the Merlin 1D engine, that has to fly for about 6 minutes continuously to get to orbit. We took one of those and ran it for more than 250 minutes to get the statistical proof of reliability that we need. So it's that testing and lots of analysis that gives us and NASA the confidence that Falcon is ready to fly humans for the first time.
And obviously a lot of additional upgrades, a lot of additional testing had to go just to make sure that both of these vehicles were human rated. So walk us through some of the specific upgrades to Dragon to meet that criteria.
Yep. So the first one's pretty obvious. We had a Cargo Dragon. It has lots of cargo cubbies, so we took all of those out, replaced it with astronaut seats, crew displays, and crew controls. But one thing that people may not know is on Cargo Dragon, we've actually been flying mice to and from the International Space Station for years. And what that meant was we had to design an environmental control and life support system for Dragon years ago. It provides oxygen, it scrubs carbon dioxide, and among other things, it controls temperature and relative humidity. So even though that was done on a smaller scale for mice, it was a great learning curve on how to help man-rated a spacecraft when you have to do it for humans.
And then, Lars, same question. What kind of specific upgrades had to go into it to certify Falcon 9 for this day?
Well, I already mentioned the mid-flight to separate from Falcon and boost the astronauts away to safety in the case that there's some kind of emergency. And that could be triggered by the astronauts or by the ground crew. What people may not know is that Falcon itself has the ability to cause that trigger. And it will do that entirely autonomously using algorithms, software, and sensors. And that's in the case of a time-critical means aborting safely. And in some cases, Falcon can do this quicker than 0.3 of a second, so much faster than a human.